fama, descanso o olhar e assim desfaço de azul mar.
Lisbon, or as the locals call Lisboa. Colorful, organized chaos. A masterful combination of old versus new. A city that is older than Rome. Lisbon is at the apex of a massive transition, from a once urban dystopia to a new renaissance transforming it into an international hub. This is not your typical on-the-surface YouTube video about a weekend in Lisbon. This is a deep dive into the authentic Lisboa. I want you to feel like you are right here in the city with me, and my goal is to prepare you so you don't look like another lost tourist looking for a Starbucks. In Lisbon, there is no shortage of incredible street art. This is one of my favorite artists, Adfuel. A lot of his murals create the illusion that a layer of the building is being ripped away, and beneath lies the colorful tiles that Portugal is so famous for. Up until the 17th century, the city had a tradition of completely white buildings. But after the devastating earthquake of 1755 that nearly leveled the entire city, locals began to add color and decorative tiles to the exterior walls and pavements. This, over time, led to welcoming street art that now covers many of the buildings all over Lisbon. Arguably the most famous street artist in Portugal right now is Bourdain II, who creates incredible 3D murals of animals by repurposing garbage found around the city. He calls himself an artivist, and there is always a strong environmental message behind each of his works. The street art in Lisbon is hard to miss, but there are many different street art tours and free street art maps if you are interested all over the internet. Okay, so a little while ago, I did a video about the top 12 things not to do in Lisbon, and one of those things were riding in the Tuk Tuks. Well, I received a very long comment, maybe one of the longest comments that I've ever had on a video, from a guy named DJ Mario. So as you can tell by this long comment, you can see that he is very upset. He says that he's gonna unsubscribe to the channel and ask me if I've ever even ridden in a Tuk Tuk, and offers to give me a Tuk Tuk ride free of charge. Well, we are about to go meet up with Mario right now and take him up on that free ride. Let's go. We're currently out here looking for Mario, but there are Tuk Tuks everywhere, and I don't know which one's him. Mario? Mario! Mario! Mario?
Yes.
How are you? How are you?
How are you?
Great to see you, my friend.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, my friend.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
First of all, I have to apologize for the slightly harsh comment that I made on your video, but I was really pissed.
No problem. Hey, no problem. We're gonna make that up today.
So I'm going to give you the standard tour that I do give all my clients. If you want to go into the Tuk Tuk, I'll give you some security pointers. So keep your safety belt on at all times, please. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle and always try to exit by the sidewalk side. Okay?
All right.
Let's do this.
Looking forward to it.
After each corner. So
yeah. I'm excited to see it through your eyes today.
I'll do my best.
So Mario, I'd love to hear your story, man. How did you get into driving Tuk Tuk?
How much time do you get? Do you have? So it's quite an easy story. I was like most people in Portugal. If you lose your job after you turn 40, it will be really, really hard for you to get another job. So I was in my 50s, and the company I had been working for had gone out of business. So I was at home feeling miserable, and one day my former girlfriend called me up and she said, "Oh, look, there's a friend of mine who just bought a Tuk Tuk and she's looking for a guide. And I think that job has got your name written all over it. Do you want to try it?" And I said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And I've been doing it ever since, last 8 years.
And so where are you from?
I'm from Lisbon, born and bred.
After meeting Mario and hearing his story, he seemed like a really great guy, and it made me want to do something special for him. Everywhere you look in Lisbon, every minute detail, there is craftsmanship and beauty. You look down at the stone streets, and there are these ornate black and white designs pounded stone by stone into the pathways. Then you look up, and entire buildings are covered by these beautiful colored tiles called azulejos. But believe it or not, these tiles are not originally Portuguese. The term azulejo has Arabic roots meaning small polished stone. The first examples of azulejos in Portugal date back to the late 15th century. The art of creating them began on the Iberian Peninsula with the Moors, who brought their mosaic techniques to decorate the walls of their palaces with intricate geometric patterns symbolizing opulence. But in the mid-16th century, pottery workshops began to emerge all over Lisbon. Since I met up with SuperMário, the tuk-tuk driver, on Avenida de Liberdade, I decided to have lunch in this area. This is one of the most beautiful streets in Lisbon due to its large trees. It is arguably the main street of Lisbon and a great place to hide from the sun on a very hot day. The street is lined with bougie designer stores like Louis Vuitton, not really my style, but there are some great hidden restaurants in the back streets. One of them being Agina. Because sardines are currently in season, there couldn't be a dish more Lisboa. It is a nice, off-the-beaten-path, authentic Portuguese restaurant that is frequented by local professionals for lunch. There is a nice outdoor patio and bar, which is great for the warmer weather months. If you are visiting Lisbon from June to September, this is when the sardinhas are in their prime and will be freshly brought in daily. The Portuguese have an art to eating these things. Since there are so many bones, you must use the cutlery to remove the meat successfully. I have always loved sardines, and Portugal is probably one of the best places to have sardines in the entire world.
So I don't know, I never told you this, but I'm also a DJ, you know? Like, I started DJing when I was 16, and I still DJ actually. During winter time, I stopped doing the tuk-tuk tours, and I go back to being a DJ because, you know, like, once a DJ, forever a DJ. whenever you dig a hole, you're going to find something. That's guaranteed. Whether it's Roman pottery or an Arab burial ground, you're going to find something. So that's what we should tell people to come and see. Our culture, our history. At a certain point, Portugal had the biggest empire on earth. The Portuguese Empire was the first global empire. It stretched all the way from Brazil to Timor, which is close to Australia. So I know for my experience that people are interested in knowing about those things. And most people, when they get to Lisbon, they haven't the slightest idea of the history this country has and this city. So I think that's what we should sell Lisbon like a cultural destination, not just like a place that you can take a low-cost flight and for 20 euros go there for a weekend and get drunk and do silly things on the streets, which is pretty much what we are seeing now.
Lisbon transforms at night, and the Bairro Alto is where many of Europe's 18-year-olds come to get drunk for the first time. Although in the daylight hours, there are some really nice cafes and restaurants in this area. It wouldn't be a proper Lisbon evening if we didn't visit a Fado House for dinner. And we were lucky enough to snag a reservation at O Corrido Casa de Fado.
Fado, meu vagabundo da rua, não sei que vida é a tua, que andas armado em senhor. Fado, tu gostas é da algazarra, do cheiro de uma guitarra.
Fado music is the heart of the Portuguese soul.
Fadista, ser fadista de raça, é enfrentar a ameaça, é uma graça que Deus nos deu.
One of the oldest folk music styles in the world, its origins are unclear. A popular theory is that it started out at sea as the sad melodic songs were created by homesick sailors and fishermen. The musicians are like jukeboxes. The Fado singer comes up and calls the tune, meaning that they've never rehearsed it together, and you will likely never hear it the same way ever again. There is something so powerful hearing Fado in a Fado house. The small rooms usually have incredibly intimate acoustics. You could hear a feather drop in here. All Fado is dominated by the sentiment known as saudade, a word that cannot be precisely defined in English, but is roughly translated to a deep yearning. Its lyrics are often sad, and a Fado performance is not successful if an audience is not moved to tears. Fado traditionally is not to be applauded. If you want an authentic Fado experience, I would highly recommend the O Corrido Fado House. Today we are visiting the Tiffin Cafe that specializes in local organic vegetarian dishes. And you don't have to be a vegan or vegetarian to appreciate how good this food is. Over the past 5 years, Lisbon has become one of the most desirable locations for tech startups in the world. It is home to many co-work spaces and tech incubators.
In terms of the startup world and all the tech that you hear about, Portugal is becoming the center for people. I think it's thriving, right? Because it's also a small community. It's not like Silicon Valley, San Francisco, or London, where it's just too big, right? Like you get lost in the sprawl of all these people doing all these projects. Here you kind of are in the community. For example, for me, I'm in financial technology, and I kind of know the community. I know what people are working on. I know the events that are going on. I know how to talk to you, how to find the investors here. And so people just come here because it's not a giant metropolitan sprawl. People know each other, and it's thriving for that reason. It's a real community.
The downside is the gentrification. The downside is that as it is a beautiful city and with a nice weather, good food, all the pros that Lisbon and Portugal have, lots and lots of people have been falling in love with Lisbon and Portugal and have been buying property here. And lots of people want to come here on vacation, and some people that own buildings and they used to have them rented, they just evicted lots of people that had been living in the old neighborhoods like Alfama and Moraria for all their lives, because the owners wanted to make Airbnbs on those buildings because they do make a lot more money. So basically we lost a lot of population. Lisbon used to have 1 million inhabitants, and now it says barely 800,000. And that's if we include the suburbs, some of the suburbs. So I think that's probably the downside.
Renting in Lisbon is now the third most expensive European city after Amsterdam and Reykjavik. However, the average salaries and income in these countries are almost 4 times higher than they are in Portugal.
I had to leave the house where I lived all my life, and I had to move to the suburbs because when the contract ended and they gave me a new contract, the rent went up like for 4 times more.
This bridge may look familiar to you. Surprisingly, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco actually came 30 years before. And confusingly, the bridge was built by the same consortium that built the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, not the Golden Gate. The bridge was originally named the Salazar Bridge, the leader of the longest living authoritarian regime in Europe. So why did they rename it the 25th of April Bridge? Well, on this day in 1974, one of the most important things in Portuguese history happened here in Lisbon.
So, I remember that day, the April 25th, 1974 day, like as if it was yesterday. I was not even 12 yet. And I remember waking up in the morning with the phone ringing. I used to go to school with a friend of mine. That his mother would drive us there, and his father was a major in the Portuguese army, And so the phone rings and I answer the phone and it's his mother saying, "You're not going to school today, stay at home, stay away from windows, there's a revolution going on." And I couldn't understand what the hell was a revolution, so I called my mother. And when my mother started talking to the lady, I remember my mother's face turning white. And then she told me, "Stay away from the windows," and we put on the radio, and there was like nothing but those military marches going on. And from time to time there would be this gentleman reading a message from the armed forces movement, the revolutionary forces, telling people that they should stay at home and that they were trying to give people a better future, and so on and so on. And that music, especially that military music, it stuck to my head, and I still remember I could sing it by heart right this moment.
The military came into the streets with carnation flowers in their guns, sending a powerful message to the people of Lisbon, ending the longest authoritarian dictatorship ever in Europe, and one of the most peaceful revolutions in history. The Campo do Ourique neighborhood is home to a beautiful market. There are many local food stands with things like homemade jams and dried fruit, along with some great lunch options. I just love markets like these, and usually when I visit a city for the first time, I always make it a point to find these markets. This is a great place to go on a hot day and recharge a bit. Here's a little secret. This is the last stop of the infamous Tram 28, which is one of the best tram routes in all of Lisbon. If you catch it here, which is the last stop, you will bypass the long and big crowds at Martim Moniz, the first stop. You will thank me later for this. The Tower of Belém is the gateway to Lisbon, located at the mouth of the Tejo River. It was built as a fort to protect any intruders, and it was also the embarkation and disembarkation for the Portuguese explorers. Here you can wait in a long line to try the original recipe for the famous pastel de nata. As the sun begins to set, I advise you to get to a miradouro or a viewpoint as soon as you possibly can. This is exactly what Mario and I did while enjoying a nice beer. At the end of the tour, Mario quoted Casablanca and said, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship," and I couldn't agree more. Lisbon has a way of getting into your bones, kind of like the cold in a Portuguese house in the winter. I hope that Lisbon doesn't change too much, because I like her just the way she is. If you come to visit Lisbon, please leave it better than you found it.
Hey, thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it, my man.
It was a pleasure, real pleasure.
It was incredible.
You're even nicer than I expected.
Glad to hear that. Hey, it was so nice to meet you. Thank you for
I
everything.
hope you have a very good end of your day. And if you need me, you know how to find me.
If you are interested in taking a tuk-tuk ride in Lisbon, I highly recommend Mario. He is a Lisbon native, an all-around great person, and knows all of the history of the city. There is a link in the description below to his Facebook, and you can message him there and book a ride with him. Ever since I had heard of Lisbon, I wanted to come to this restaurant. Featured on Anthony Bourdain's No Reservation, this is Ramiro. This is my favorite type of restaurant in Lisbon, a no-frills working-class seafood restaurant. If the waiter seems like he's upset with you, he probably is, and if he's not, you're in the wrong restaurant. This is where you can try Portugal's most iconic seafood like percebes, which is goose barnacles, tiger shrimp the size of your head, which I confused with a lobster, and incredible lobsters so fresh, they bring them to you alive to show you before they cook them. And now I see why this was one of Anthony Bourdain's favorite restaurants while visiting Lisbon. The restaurant has gained so much hype over the past decade that they had to buy the restaurant next door just to turn into a waiting room like the DMV. It's easy to see why Lisbon has become one of my favorite cities in the entire world. If you come to Lisbon, make sure to leave it better than you found it and have an awareness and respect for the locals that have been here a very, very long time. If you want to see more content about Portugal, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. This is some guy named Dave in Portugal, and we'll see you next time.